news, transfer news, match previews, legend interviews, Spurs winning, press conferences, covering everything Tottenham and England.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast. In this edition, we'll be talking about the huge game that will take place at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Sunday. Tottenham Hotspur take on North London rivals Arsenal. I'm absolutely delighted to bring back to the channel Sophie Nicolaou from the Highbury Squad. Sophie, how are you?
I'm very well, Chris. How are you? Good to see you. I always look forward to our annual North London Derby chat. So here we go.
Well, are you looking forward to the game? That is the question.
I was before the international break. I'm not so sure now. I'm still excited for it. What these games, what they do to our tummies, eh? It's just terrible.
Do you know what?
No matter how good you are or what's going on, it just leaves you in knots.
I was feeling very excited about this game yesterday, and now we're getting that bit closer. I'm starting to feel really nervous about it. But let me just say to everyone watching and listening, we're currently live on YouTube, on X and on Facebook. So please do get involved. Let us know how you are feeling as a Tottenham or an Arsenal fan. If we've got any Arsenal viewers at the moment watching and listening. But great to have you here, Sophie. First of all, how are you feeling as an Arsenal fan right now? Because, of course, 3 games in. What have you made of the season so far?
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to hearing what changed your mind from the confidence to the uneasiness. And I'm sure
it's always like that. Always.
Okay. Start of the season hasn't been great. I don't think that, and I'm okay with that, because the last 2 seasons where we have failed to win the league, we've started off brilliantly and we have kind of gone ahead of City. I think that we like being the hunter versus the hunted. So I think it suits us fine. But these next 2 games are absolutely massive for us. The Brighton game, I think, I don't know. I mean, even Spurs fans, if that sending off had happened, Chris, I don't know what you think about it, but it just seemed ridiculous. But at the same time, Declan Rice put himself in a position where he made the referee have to make a choice and a decision. And it wasn't the referee that was going to say, listen, don't do that again, because if you do, you're going to get sent off. So I think we just have to be a little bit mature. There's so much at stake this season, and the fine margins for mistakes are getting thinner and finer every single season. I thought the Villa game, we were really good. But I don't think we've played very well. Declan Rice looked absolutely exhausted when he came back. A few fatigued players from the Euros and Copa America as well. So, you know, generally we don't do well when we come back from an international break. But the last time that happened, we went to Dubai and set some things straight, came back and never really looked back until Manchester City caught us, of course. So early in the season to say, but the next 2 games are massive already.
Absolutely. Sophie, what do you make of Arteta signing a new contract? Because forgive me if I'm wrong. I think one of the last times we played Arsenal, the same thing happened.
Yeah. You like signing contracts. We like handing them out. Yeah, and I think that this probably would have been announced sooner. But with the summer transfer window and everything going on, timing, I think, came at a good moment as well. Post Odegaard injury, kind of give everyone a boost and a lift. Some people might call that PR, but you know, the deal was done and it was ready to be announced, and it was no question in my mind that, you know, this was going to happen. And I think most Arsenal fans knew it was going to happen. It's not as long as Nicholas Jackson's contract, though, Chris.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's a whole new show talking about the Chelsea players and contracts. Wow.
That takes him into Back to the Future 2 mode,
Wow.
contract. So, yeah. But no, it's good news. The stability is important. And I think it's undeniable in terms of what he's done since he's taken over. I was not an early adopter. I think you know that. We talked about that even on my show maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And but you can't deny what he's done in terms of elevating the culture of the club and regaining some confidence in the fans. But most importantly, the product on the pitch and the DNA and the profile of the players has changed, and we've upped our game in the transfer market. So credit to him and Adu, who doesn't really get a lot of credit and gets a lot more hate. But together with the leadership team at Arsenal, they've done wonders over the last 2 years, 3 years.
Sophie, what have you made of Spurs season so far? Because, of course, we've also played 3. We've got a 1-1 draw at Leicester, 4-0 home win against Everton, and most recently lost at St James's Park 2-1. It's fair to say that Spurs have played well in all 3 games. We should be sitting here with 9 points out of 3 matches, but in the final third, we were just so wasteful. What have you made of Tottenham?
Yeah, I'm not a rose-colored glasses person, and I just call things as I see them. And I think after Manchester City, you guys have created the most chances so far this season in the Premier League. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, Chris. I don't know how you lost that game to Newcastle. Well, I guess we do, because you couldn't convert the chances. The amount of chances you create versus the conversion ratio, that's something, if you can tweak and fix, I think that you can be a threat, and especially a threat to us this weekend. But the question mark with Tottenham is always going to be, does Ange have a plan B? And is he willing to take less risks in games versus clubs that really do, love to like a Manchester City? And I think you showed discipline towards the end of last season in a couple of matches, but he's so strong on his philosophy and his belief in how the game should be played. And at times I feel that might cost you, whereas you can gain points instead of losing them. So yeah, you've been good. And, I think it's going to be tough for us this weekend. There's no doubt about that. But you deserve to win that Newcastle game.
So when I look at the records, Arsenal have dropped points in just 3 games in the calendar year of 2024. Now, if I also give you this stat, when Spurs were unbeaten after the first 10 games of last season, winning 8, drawing 2, sitting top of the Premier League, life was really good then. And then, of course, we played Chelsea at home. We got beat 4-1. It was a weird vibe and atmosphere inside the stadium, because I don't think I've ever been inside either White Hart Lane or the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium having lost 4-1. And the fans applauded the team off and the way that we played and the way that we went for it, having only had 9 men. But since then, and including that game, Spurs have played 31 Premier League games, winning 13, losing 13, and drawing the others. Now, that makes Spurs, on paper, on record, being very inconsistent. Some fans already are frustrated with this style of football that we're playing, with such a high line. And like you've mentioned, and we're not even 10 minutes in, and you've mentioned about Ange not having a plan B, and everyone seems to be saying the same thing. What have you made of the time that Postecoglou has come in at Spurs so far? Because I think a lot of Spurs fans forget the kind of mess and the amount of work that he had to, sort out basically when he walked in. But yourself, that it wasn't long ago that Arsenal fans were heavily criticising Arteta. But, it's time and patience, isn't it?
I was one of those fans in his first year and a half. I was absolutely one of those fans. I couldn't see it. I didn't see this in our future. And, it's funny, Super Kev always used to say to me, Soph, it's the players. And I was definitely a believer and am a believer in a manager creates a team in their image. And we see all the really good teams. Yes, it's easy maybe for Pep and Klopp, but, really good managers. And Conte actually did it at Juventus. He did it at Chelsea. Somehow it didn't work for you with you guys. We'd seen Mourinho. Somehow it didn't work for you guys. Sometimes manager culture doesn't fit. Culture supersedes the manager. And I think that happened at Tottenham. But we became an image and have become an image of Mikel Arteta's personality, I think. And some people don't like that. If he's your manager, you love him. If he's not your manager, he probably gets on your absolute nerves. And I totally get that. But you guys were broken, and I think similarly with Manchester United and Tottenham, it's really funny because I see Arsenal fans too. They do this. Oh, Ange, people taking bets, and fellow fans do it all the time. Who's the first manager that's going to be sacked? Ange is on the list. Maresca's on the list. There's quite a few Eddie Howe's on the list. Ten Hag is probably top of the list. But what I don't understand is, a lot of Arsenal fans afforded Mikel Arteta that luxury in that time. Eric Ten Hag doesn't get the luxury and the time from his own fans. He's won 2 trophies. He's won one more than Mikel Arteta. Ange has been in the job and inherited an absolute mess. And how many transfer windows has he actually had to be able to turn Tottenham totally into his image? I think Ange's problem, Chris, is the style of play and being pig-headed about it. That's where maybe he'll struggle, with fans in the longer term. But in terms of time, I think Arsenal should be used as a blueprint for how they persisted and were patient with Mikel Arteta. So I don't understand that. But yeah, I don't want to be a hypocrite and say that I get it as well, because I was one of those fans in Mikel's early years.
With the style of football that you mentioned there, Sophie, let me put this picture on screen now. This is the high line that so many of us Spurs fans keep talking about and looking at again and again and again. Joe Linton here playing the ball through to Murphy, who of course then runs onto it, squares it to Isak, and of course Newcastle win the game at St James's Park. What do you make of this high line? Because of course we saw this at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last season. Saka ran on, still had a lot to do, but a great finish.
I believe because of that high line, I think that we're going to be able to find a way to cope without Odegaard, because we've got very quick thinking players and we've got pacey players. And the majority of the narrative is, yes, we're missing Declan Rice and yes, we're missing Martin Odegaard. But the way Tottenham play high risk football with that high line, Saka, whether it's Trossard, whether it's Martinelli, whether it's going to be Sterling, Havertz doesn't have as much pace, but he definitely has the football intelligence. That is something that I think you're going to struggle with the most. And there's so much at stake in football. I mentioned that earlier. Are you frustrated as a Tottenham fan that against certain teams, you seem disciplined against Manchester City at yours? Maybe that's because we were going for the title and you just battened down the hatches. But he's shown that he can do it once or twice. Are you frustrated with that when you see that? Do you think, oh no, with Arsenal's pace and their creativity, we're in trouble on Sunday?
Well, we know, this is a Spurs channel, Sophie, so I'm not exactly going to be sitting here saying how great Arsenal are, but they are a very, very good team. And I do worry about this game with the pace that they've got up front, particularly with the likes of Saka. And I think when you look at certain games, Spurs sometimes last season, particularly at the latter part of last season, were very easy to play against. I think Wolves certainly knew exactly what to do against us. They'd done the double over us last season. And I just feel that some games we need to do things slightly bit differently, and we just don't. And I think that has frustrated some Spurs fans. But in another way, I think that Ange Postecoglou needs the time and the tools and, more transfers, better players in. I don't feel that we've done enough in this transfer window. So, as I said earlier, I don't think that some fans realise what a mess he walked into, a number of players going out the door, and, we needed better players in. In that final third, it took us a year to replace Harry Kane. We've done that with Dominic Solanke. We've been unlucky with him being out injured for the last couple of games. But I do feel like Ange does need the time. I do like him. And like you mentioned, when you've gone through Jose Mourinho, Nuno Espirito Santo, Antonio Conte, the football was very, very different to what it is under Ange. And it was like a party atmosphere at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last season under Ange when we won certain games. So with that respect, when you're talking about the style of play, there are certain games that I do go into now, and I do feel a bit nervy because of the way that we play. But with Mickey van der Ven playing, I feel like a lot of fans, I've heard this hundreds and thousands of times since that Newcastle game, say, well, if we had Dominic Solanke up front, we would have scored those goals. If we had Mickey van der Ven at the back, we wouldn't have conceded. So it's, again, you're relying on one or two players, which I feel like we relied on Harry Kane for so many years.
Yeah.
Can you keep doing that? You know, especially when we want to be fighting on all fronts. And off air, we spoke about the Europa League. That's going to be an interesting situation because you can't keep playing the same players week in, week out. You need to rotate. You mentioned Martin Odegaard. Let's just hear from Mikel Arteta on the team news regarding Odegaard.
We need some more tests, so let's see what happens in the next day or so, this afternoon probably, and see what happens, what is the extent of the injury, and how quickly we can get him back. He's super positive about everything. We know Martin, he wants to be there every single day, but we have to wait and see.
I know it's probably swelling, so it's impossible for you to give a proper prognosis, but having seen him, I'm sure you have seen him, is he hopeful that it might not be as bad as potentially you first thought?
I leave that to the doctor, but yeah, his will, there's no question about that. He wants to be present in every game, and obviously a big game like this one, but we need to make sure that that we know, first of all, how good he can be or not.
But just to clarify, I know we can't read too much because of the swelling, but you're not ruling him out at this stage.
Players with 48 hours are always available, but let's see what happens.
Sophie, is this mind games here?
He's become so much better at these press conferences. You know, he's really mastering. I wish he'd mastered the art of pulling plays from international, games in September. But he's really mastering the art of how to deal with the media. And I don't think there's a chance Odegaard plays. I will. I'm not going to say I'll wear a Spurs shirt. No, but there's absolutely no way I see Martin Odegaard playing on Sunday. And I think Mikel's smart enough to have been planning for the majority of the week without him. Getting on crutches. Okay, some Arsenal fans were like, yeah, but he didn't use his crutches to go up the stairs. It doesn't look good. And I have to lean towards the Norwegians, who were quite open about, the time that he might be off. And I'm not planning on seeing Odegaard this weekend.
So, this is the last time that you played against Brighton, and this was a starting 11: Raya, Timber, Gabriel, Saliba, White, Rice, Partey, Odegaard, Trossard, Havertz, and Saka. Now, of course, we know that Declan Rice won't be featuring because he's out suspended. Odegaard, well, I think I'm going to put a question mark on that one now. I know you think he's not playing, but you never know. These managers do play mind games a lot of the time, particularly when it's a big game like this. What changes do you think that Arteta will make?
Well, it's interesting because the midfield, losing two of our best players in the same area of the pitch, makes you wonder. For me, I'm kind of excited to see what he's going to do. How's he going to tackle this problem versus being fearful? Because Martin Odegaard, I think, is not only one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. I think he's one of the best, number 10s in the world. I think he's elevated his game. He's a Ballon d'Or nominee. He's a very, very special player. And it's very difficult to replace a player like that. Declan Rice has been superb for us. Yes, he started the season badly, but in a North London derby, a London derby where he's, used to that type of atmosphere, did great last season in the derbies. We're going to miss those players. I can't sit here and sugarcoat it. However, I think that he stays with the majority of the team, knowing that he's lost two of his best players. So the question is, who's going to come in for Odegaard and who's going to come in for Declan Rice? The thing that scares me the most is you've got Thomas Partey and Jorginho, who aren't very fast. They're not quick. And on a transition, I fear that. And Partey just played 90 minutes in both of his international games this last 10 days. He's back in good form, but towards the end of a match, he really starts to tire. And I'm hoping he has one of those super kind of games against Spurs. But that's the thing that worries me the most. So I think you might see someone like Trossard in Odegaard's role if Mikel Arteta is feeling creatively risky. Mm-hmm. But you'll probably see Havertz. Now, again, Havertz isn't the fastest player either. So you could really do some damage for us in that midfield area. But we do have smart players who are really good at positional play. And the gaps between our midfield and our defense aren't that great. I mean, and I want to say aren't that great. We're very smart about how we play and our transition football. We're as good off the ball as we are on the ball. And our defense is immense. And David Raya has come into this superb form right now where he looks unstoppable. So we also have really good cover. Martinelli, I think, might start because he's very good at tracking back and he's very good at hustling, much better than Trossard. So he could even play Saka in that role and then play Havertz in the 9, play Sterling on the right, Martinelli on the left. So when I say these names and I'm talking about it out loud, I'm like, we have a good team. We have more quality than quantity this season, Chris. And I think that's the difference. So it all depends on if Arteta wants to surprise you guys, but we're happy to not have the ball and just wait for that break with that high line. And that's how we're going to play.
It's interesting, Sophie, isn't it? Because the amount of Arsenal fans I've spoke to about this situation with the injury and suspension to Odegaard and Rice, by bringing in players like Jorginho and Thomas Partey, they're quality players still, like you said.
Yeah, they are very good players. And Jorginho is the type of player that can control the tempo of a game. Partey on his day is really one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. But I mean, he struggled, and these injuries that he gets, we never have him for a full season. If there's a time for him to show up and play a game and play out of his skin, it's this one on Sunday and the following weekend because we have Man City. But yeah, there are quality players, intelligent players. Jorginho as well, mentally, what he brings to the side. I think he'll help them overcome the adversity of not having our captain. He may well wear the captain's armband if he's selected on Sunday as well. So someone like him, but again, football is about speed as well these days. It's not only up here, it's also in the feet. And 20 minutes to go, then what are you going to do? Are you going to shift Zinchenko into the midfield? That's very risky, even though he plays the inverted role to have him there. He plays there for his country, yes. But Mikel doesn't like taking big risks like that. And do you bring on a young player like Waneri, 17 years old, where he could make a name for himself? And at the same time, though, if he has a bad game, Arsenal fans will be on his back, and you don't want that either.
I was going to ask that about Mikel Arteta taking risks. How many times does he take risks? Because we know that Spurs take a lot of risks in the game. That is just the game plan. But if it is a draw, say, with 10, 20 minutes to go, this is a game, Sophie, that you need to win because, you want to be going that one step further to try and win the Premier League title. Actually, before I get your answer, I think you're going to be surprised by this because I asked you off air, have you seen the press conferences today? And you've seen Arteta's, but you haven't seen Postecoglou's. Now, Postecoglou said there's no reason why Spurs can't compete for the Premier League this season. Listen to this.
Well, not specifically Arsenal, but we want to be a club that can challenge everyone. So, that's what we're trying to aim to become. And to do that, you've got to perform at a certain level on a consistent basis. You've got to have a squad strong enough to do that, to withstand the challenges that inevitably come during the course of a season. But we've started the season fairly solidly from a performance perspective. Obviously, the results haven't reflected that, but I think we're in a good place to really, push on from last year and improve in all areas of our game. And if we do that, I mean, we got close to challenging last year. There's no reason why we can't this year.
Sophie, what do you make of that?
Close to challenging last year. Maybe up until October. I'm not trying to be facetious, but that's a little bit of an exaggeration, right? Listen, I don't want to like Ange. I want to hate the guy. But the Greek in me just wants to kind of, just be like, listen, he's a Greek managing in the Premier League. We don't get that often. So when we do get Greeks doing good things, you kind of want to say respect to that, right? I wonder if this type of kind of, not that he sounds whiny, but that feels depressed all the time, if that's going to start grating on Spurs fans. I don't know. I think that he has every right to say that he wants his team to challenge, That is what every team should wish for at the start of the season. And I think since Leicester won the league, managers have the right to say that, right? What is he going to do? Sit there and say we've got no chance? And if he does that, then people are going to be on his case. So I think you've got to support the manager and the belief in the fact that, you know what, we're going to give it a go until we can't anymore. And last season, it didn't work out for you guys, but you've got to admire his competitiveness. And a lot of people have questioned that because of the league that he came from. But, you know, he's got a great mindset. He learned from one of the greatest icons in football, in Puskas, you know, so you've got to give him the respect. And if I was a Spurs fan, I'd rather hear my manager talking like that than not.
Does it give people more expectation, though, Sophie? Because he's come out and said, you know, in the last couple of weeks that, you know, he's won everywhere he's gone and he's always won trophies in the second year.
Listen, hope is not a plan, but you're allowed to dream, right? That's what sports is all about. And I think we've all become a little bit cynical. We live in an instant gratification world as well. And there are some teams that won't get, look, Chelsea's managerial revolving door. You can say what you want about it. It's yielded trophies and results and they've won, right? Arsenal and Tottenham are a little bit different. Our history is a little bit different. We like to stick with the manager, but you've been forced into those changes because of the fact that football is instant gratification. Win now. And I think Arsenal busted that myth a little bit with Mikel Arteta. And maybe Newcastle were following that a little with Eddie Howe. Maybe you'll follow it. Maybe that's why Manchester United didn't get rid of Ten Hag. So I think it's okay for him to put his. It always feels like he's on the defensive, that he has to prove that he deserves that position. And I think at some point the media need to kind of take a different approach. He's the manager of Tottenham, is in the Premier League. He's got you into the Europa League. Yes, you want to be playing Champions League football, but at the same time, you've kept hold of Son. The fact that Son has stayed at Tottenham in that transition period when Kane left, he could have easily gone to any club in the world. He is a world-class player and he didn't, and there's a reason for that. So I think that maybe there's a bit of disrespect when it comes to Ange because of the leagues that he's come from and where he's won.
He's always proved everyone wrong, though, Sophie. That's the interesting point. But do you think that he's going to do it in the Premier League? Because everyone I talk to, journalists, fans, opponents, fans, you know, anyone to do with football or involved in football, they all say, you know, this is the Premier League. It's completely different.
Yes, but yes, it is different and it is harder. And you know who's made it harder? Manchester City, Pep Guardiola. Now, we're going to see how that all shakes out, Chris. And that's going to be, you know, a massive moment for them and for the Premier League. Look what's happened to Chelsea. Be careful what you wish for, right? Yes, they've won everything. I just said that. But they're in a bit of a mess. They've got owners arguing over, you know, who wants to be the sole owner of the club. I've been there as an Arsenal fan. It was a mess. We protested. Kroenke's out. I actually now think I was a supporter of the Kroenke's earlier on than I was of Mikel Arteta, because I felt like, you know, until they own the club solely, then you'll see them running it the way they want. So I think that I think Manchester City have made it very difficult for other teams to believe they can win the Premier League. And Tottenham fans are no different to that. And there are some Arsenal fans who still this season think we've got no chance, which is why these next two games are big. And I was talking to Paul Buckle on our show, the former Luton Town manager, and he was saying this season more than any season, every single game is massive for Arsenal and they have to win every single one because the history is in the books. You know, City have been able to topple us the last two seasons. They're going for their 5th in a row. That's a juggernaut to stop for any team, let alone, you know, Tottenham.
Do you think that Arsenal will be any closer? Because I must admit, Sophie, when you signed Declan Rice, I thought Arsenal will get that a bit closer, but it's probably not quite enough. That's exactly what happened. This year, of course, you know, when you look back at the last 2 years, what more could you have done? It comes down to just, you know, very, very fine details in certain games. You know, you've got to be almost perfect to win the Premier League now, as you mentioned about Manchester City, how good they are. have you done enough in terms of transfers coming in to try and get that little bit closer, or perhaps get over the line this time?
You know, last season we shot ourselves in the foot. The season prior, in the improbable year when no one was expecting us to do it, you can forgive that. You've not been there before, right? You've been staying at the roadside motel for a number of years in the Premier League. All of a sudden, you find yourself at the Four Seasons, and you didn't quite know how to behave, right, with the Silver Service.
Love that.
Last year, we should have won the league. And the reason I say that is not through arrogance, Chris. We did what we had to do. We beat City and we beat Liverpool, and then we got a point on the road against City and we got a point on the road against Liverpool. Now, a lot of people poo-pooed that performance against Manchester City at the Etihad. We bottled it. We didn't go to win. Are you joking? We know our history and we know what we've been incapable of doing there. But then what did we do? We dropped 6 points to Aston Villa. We dropped points against Fulham, and we dropped points against West Ham. That's the fine margins that you're talking about. We made up those fine margins against the two teams we really needed to. But then we dropped the ball against those lesser teams. And that's what we can't do this season. And that was the difference between us winning the Premier League and not. And have we done enough in the transfer window? It's easy to say no now because Mikel Merino got injured and Calafiori got injured. The Mikel Merino one is just a freak accident. You know, Gabriel Magalhaes landing on anyone is going to be a tough one. But this incessant request for a striker from Arsenal fans, I get it. A prolific striker gets you here. But we scored the most goals in the history of our existence in the Premier League, more than the Invincibles last season. We spread goals around. That's not how Mikel Arteta likes to play. If anything, I would have liked to have seen maybe another midfielder come in and a centre-back. But Sterling coming in, I think, is a really good thing. He's got the experience. He's got the know-how. I think he's refreshed and revitalised to prove himself again after everyone's just told him his career is over. So that was a good signing. And I don't think it was as last minute as people think. I think we could have done a little bit better, but I'm also happy with what we have.
Sophie, do you think Arsenal will do it this year?
Oh, man, question. I want to believe yes, but I just think that Manchester City with Pep Guardiola are a different beast, you know? And I think they're going to be really hard to beat again. And you know what? I think this season, he's kind of like this guy. He's done the treble. He's done the 4 in a row. Do you know what I think he's going for this season? I haven't heard it anywhere. This is just my Sostradamus hunch. I reckon he wants to go invincible. I think he wants to take that as well. Yeah. Because he stripped Man United of those bragging rights. And I think he's ready to strip Arsenal of that one bragging right that we have over anyone. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did it. They've gotten close.
He wants everything. What a manager.
Can't stand
do you think Liverpool are in the mix as well, or any other teams in the mix for the title?
That's a really good question about Liverpool. I was impressed with them when I saw them on the US tour, and the way. Now, you see, it's really funny, isn't it? Some Liverpool fans are complaining that it's a little bit boring, right? It's not Klopp ball. But I think they've got some really good youngsters coming through. I think keeping Salah was a huge deal. Luis Diaz, I'd have him in my team any day of the week. I think he's a very special player. Van Dijk still seems like he's got the legs. They've got one of the best goalkeepers in the world. They haven't lost too much. Robertson stays fit. Trent seems to be getting back to, his best. I think they're a threat. I do. How their depth, though, is, I think, what their fans should be concerned over. But it seems like Arne Slot plays the sexy football, but with discipline.
Yeah.
Kind of what you guys want.
Yeah. We need a trophy, Sophie. That's what we need.
Oh, I've chosen you guys, and people really got mad at me for this, but I've picked you to win the FA Cup this season.
Really?
I have. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's as I've said so often on this channel, you know, particularly in the last couple of months, we need to go strong in some of these competitions. And it did disappoint a lot of people when Ange made 10 changes in the League Cup last year. So hopefully we don't go down that route again. Arteta spoke about the challenge of possibly winning the Premier League this season. This is what he had to say earlier.
Day by day, guys. It's if we look where we're going to be at the end of May and the amount of games that we have to play and the level and the challenges ahead, we cannot think like this. You know, we're gonna run out of oxygen. You know, I want to have the energy, the enthusiasm for the next day, the next game, and prepare that in the best possible way. And that's what we're gonna do. And we're gonna go to Spurs with an unbelievable energy, and believe that we're gonna go there to be ourselves and try to win the game.
Sophie, what a big week it is playing Spurs and Manchester City. If you don't pick up, say, 4 points in these two games, is the title charge over? Sophie, did you get that? I think we've just got a sound issue. We'll get Sophie back in a second. I think we're just having a sound issue. I should have said, actually, Sophie is actually live from LA in America. So we will get her back in a couple of seconds. And we will carry on talking about the big game, the North London derby on Sunday. Please do get your predictions in. I think we've got Sophie back now.
Arteta froze and then I froze in time. So I don't quite know what happened there. I blame Mikel.
Sophie, I asked, I don't know whether you heard my question, but of course, playing Spurs and then Manchester City, if you don't get, say, 4 points from these two games, is it as bold as saying the title charge is over this season? Because, you know, such fine margins, and we know what winning runs Manchester City can go on.
I think it's going to be difficult, especially when you see we lost the league by 2 points last season. So yeah, it would be difficult. And it's really weird to actually say that out loud, and we're only in September, right?
Yeah.
But it's not. We're just not dealing with an ordinary team. We're dealing with a Pep Guardiola team that has mastered the art of winning and overcome, you know, their own adversities, injuries. I mean, people said Haaland didn't really have a good season last year. I just don't get any of that. They're a very good team. Despite what's happened, he still has to manage a team on the pitch to win. I think it'd be very difficult for us. I think then we've got no margin for any more errors, because you don't quite know where Manchester City are going to slip up. And that's the difficult part about it. We're then going to rely on, you guys have always played quite well against them, but that didn't work out for us last season. We can't put ourselves in those types of positions. And earlier you said this is a must-win game for Arsenal. It's a can't-lose game.
Sophie, I was going to ask you that question. I think it's only fair to bring you on here and ask you that, about how you felt when Manchester City visited the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium late on in the season. And it's funny, actually. I was interviewed on Sky Sports and they said, who do you want to win? And I said, Spurs. And weirdly, that day, it was a very busy day and it was a pre-record. They didn't actually show their interview, but some of the interviews that they did show from fans earlier on in the day, most of them said that they wanted Manchester City to win that match. How did you feel about that?
So that's where, I mean, I respect anyone who gets to the level of managing in the Premier League. What an achievement. Seeing how Ange handled that whole thing, I don't know how any Spurs fan could be against him. After that, I would have been, that's my manager. And he proved to you guys that he's there to win.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about the rivalry. He cares about it when we play each other. But he wanted to win a game against Manchester City.
Yeah.
And you had 2 great chances. who was it who had the chance? Was it Bentancur who hit the crossbar? Someone hit the
Well,
crossbar, and then
it was,
Son's chance.
yeah, of course, the chance that Son had, that is the one that is heavily criticised by a lot of people.
Yes. I don't think, listen, I'm not a fan because he plays for you, of course. He's a good player. I would have bet my money on him scoring that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would have bet my life savings that he would have scored that. And I think it's really distasteful to question those things in that manner.
Yeah.
But when it's swirling, the whole build up to it and what happened that day and that night, and actually then cheering for them and clapping for them, that's where I think it went a bridge too far. If the shoe was in the other foot, if I could stop you from winning the Premier League, as you know, I would want to do anything to stop you from winning the Premier League. But if we're playing you, there's 2 fixtures every year you don't want to lose. And, you know, it's the North London derby. But if you're playing Liverpool for the title, I just think those things, you have to be professional. And it's funny, I spoke to somebody behind the scenes, and apparently Andrew was absolutely fuming about that because the staff were talking about it, staff of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, and he just wasn't having that. And I thought it was unprofessional, but he came across as very professional. And if that was my manager, I would have been really proud of him that night.
Do you know what though, Sophie? Why I told you about this Sky Sports interview, because I was kind of a bit worried about that because it was meant to be live, and I knew that everyone that week, everyone was talking about it, and I think that I was definitely in the minority of people that actually wanted us to win that game because I was very much of the similar attitude to Ange Postecoglou. You know, you can't keep, and he used the phrase, you can't keep peering over the fence at your neighbours. You know, you've got to concentrate on yourself. But I knew that had that, or when that interview went out, I was going to be heavily criticised from a number of fans in the fan base. But I think a lot of people come round to the idea of actually, yeah, we should have had the attitude that we wanted to win. But I could never imagine going to, you know, my home ground. And, you know, it's such a weird atmosphere because where I was in the stadium, some people, when Son missed that chance, they were cheering. And I just, it was really bizarre. It was one of the most, well, probably the most bizarre football game I've ever been to, of some people cheering, some people disappointed. It was weird.
That's
really
the part
weird.
that's the part that was actually even worse, right? And I'm going to say this as respectfully. I hope that your listeners will take it the right way, because we had an inferiority complex just for a little bit when Pochettino took you to a Champions League final. I'm not going to deny that. That was the worst time of my life as a football fan. And we had lost a Champions League final. I mean, that day I wanted a rocket ship to take me to Pluto. It was awful. I couldn't even watch the game. I went out. I went for a walk, and it was a long walk, right? And we started getting stuck into this. You guys were beating, Pochettino had a good record against us. We started having a bit of this inferiority complex, which we'd never really had before. And I think what Andrew's trying to do is remove that inferiority complex completely from Tottenham's culture.
I agree.
And don't worry about what Arsenal were doing. Let's worry about what we're doing. Yeah. And that's what he tried to do that night and that week playing City.
Yeah. Sadly, I think that it's going to take, you know, quite a time for that mentality shift. I think it's going to be quite a time before that happens. Sophie, let's have a look at the Spurs lineup against Newcastle. Vicario, Udogie, Romero, Dragushin, Porro, Basuma, Sarr, Heung-min Son, Maddison, Odegaard, and Kulusevski. Ange Postecoglou in his press conference on Friday afternoon said that Basuma is doubtful, having gone off injured during the international break. We know that Van der Ven will be back. We know that Dominic Solanke will be back. Out of the Spurs squad and the Spurs starting 11, who do you fear?
Damn. Are they fit? Damn, I was hoping they wouldn't be fit.
They're fit. They're fit and raring to go.
Having seen how Saliba and Gabriel, Saliba in particular, has handled Haaland, I'm not too worried about Solanke. However, he's a very smart footballer. who's done very good things in the league last season. But I think he's a player that needs to prove consistency over a longer period of time. You know, good investment, good head on his shoulders, probably a really good buy for you guys. And for you to have him back for this game is huge. Van de Ven, I think, has been probably one of the best investments any club has made over the last 2 seasons. Very good play, very elegant defender, and a player that I wouldn't mind. I don't think he ousts Saliba and Gabriel at this point, only because Saliba and Gabriel have got more Premier League mileage. But to have someone like him on our bench in case there's an injury, I would love a player like that. But he doesn't oust them from the starting 11. Son is the one that is the world-class player for me. But has he been the same Son that you guys have totally lauded and fallen in love with over the last few years? He's playing on the left again. For a while, he was playing down the middle for you, wasn't he? When you guys, yeah. So yeah, he's the Harry Kane. It's like the two of them guaranteed a goal. I mean, when I'd make my predictions when Kane was playing, it would be like, right, Tottenham, is it 1 or 2? That's how I would start and I feel like he's guaranteed a goal on Sunday. I really do. He's the one I fear the most.
What do you think of the £65 million signing of Dominic Solanke? Because you mentioned earlier about Arsenal fans saying that you'd like a striker. Is he Is he the striker that you would have perhaps liked at Arsenal?
I don't think so, only because, and it's not because he signed for you, but he didn't do well when he went to Liverpool. Was he given enough chances? Not sure. He really lit it up last season and became the shining star in a team that doesn't really have too many stars. I believe a player like him deserves another shot because he's got the talent. And the price tag you paid is British tax, right? I mean, if he came from France or somewhere else, you're probably buying him for 35 million, 40. Because he's a British player, he's costing you 65. So for me, no. But I think that for you guys, he's a missing piece that you desperately, desperately needed because it's just not been working out with Richarlison. Playing Son out of position wasn't working either. And I think he's a smart footballer out of the box as well. He's not just like this big guy you throw up front. He's a smart footballer who can really connect play very well. So, but not for me personally. I'll take Son off your hands though.
Sophie, where do you see the weaknesses in both sides on Sunday?
Midfield for us, which wouldn't have been my answer if Odegaard and Rice were playing. And the weak spot is always going to be who's playing at left back. I believe Timber will start. He's much more disciplined defensively than Zinchenko. Although Zinchenko offers something totally different going forward, the way that, he inverts, his quick passing, slow when it needs to be, building up play, connecting everyone in, looping everyone in. And I think we've missed that a little bit since Timber has been playing. But what Timber offers, in the defensive area is superior to what Zinchenko offers now. So that's a really big decision for Mikel Arteta. But if we don't want to be on the ball and we want you to have all the ball, Timber starts, Zinchenko can come on a little bit later. That would be the area that I would be worried about the most if he were to pick Zinchenko, who I'm a fan of as well, and I think has become a bit of a scapegoat unnecessarily with some Arsenal fans.
And the weaknesses in the Spurs team?
I mean, if we don't expose your high line, if you give that to us and it's
happening.
Okay, so there you go. There you have it. That's that done.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Before I get your thoughts on what the North London derby means to you, let's hear what it means to Mikel Arteta.
Probably afterwards, especially when you win at home and you celebrate with your supporters and you know how it means. There is something special. We have so many huge Arsenal supporters since the day that they were born, and looking at that stuff, and we have some good examples around the first team as well. They come in after the game and the emotion and what it means for them. It's a privilege to have the power to contribute to someone making someone really happy and a special day for him.
Sophie, it's probably a really silly question because, of course, the North London derby means absolutely everything to us fans, no matter what team you're supporting. But when this fixture does come around, how do you feel on the day?
I just never want to lose, ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, I have... sorry, I just realized too that there's a little reflection coming through. I hope it hasn't been irritating anyone watching and stuff. I'd realized it might reflect on my glasses. I apologize about that. My brother's a Tottenham fan, and you can imagine how that has
Is that
been
irritating?
over the years. Very irritating. Yeah, he irritates me. Luckily, we live in different countries now. It's funny because my dad's a Man United fan. My sister's a United fan. My mum was a Stoke City supporter, and that's all about Gordon Banks from back in the day, right? And my brother's a Tottenham fan, and I'm an Arsenal fan. I hung out with my cousins who were Arsenal fans growing up, so that's how that happened with me. So I've my sister's married to a Tottenham fan. She hates Arsenal, so it's really a bad time if we don't get a result. My niece is married to a Spurs man. We've got some of my first cousins are Spurs fans. So you really don't want to lose this game, Chris. And, you know, the Greeks can be very harsh when it comes to the banter, let me tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we look at the match stats here, the head-to-head, 64 games played in the Premier League, Spurs winning 15, Arsenal winning 25, the other 24 finishing as a draw. I've said this in the last couple of days that it feels like so many more because you've won 7 either at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium or White Hart Lane. It feels like more than 7 because of the pain we've gone through there. What's your favourite memories of this fixture?
Man, there's so many, right? It's such I didn't mean that sounded like, yeah. I think it's become the best derby in English football.
Yeah.
And, you know, the City and United matches, sure, they've thrown out some stuff. But this is the best derby. And there's always drama, goals. For me, you know, winning the league at White Hart Lane has to be at the top. The Thierry Henry goal and slide, of course, is memorable. You know what, in recent memory, just seeing Emile Smith-Rowe and Saka play the way they did in that first half at the Emirates. You guys came back and scored 2 goals in the second half, and I got a bit scared then. But seeing 2 Highland boys kind of have that performance against Tottenham, that was really special. And you know, those are probably the ones that stand out the most. There's a lot I haven't liked too, Chris. I can name the Harry Kane mask.
Yeah, love it.
Oh gosh, and David Bentley, that really was annoying. That was yeah. And who was the defender with the head? Is it not Kabul? Was it Yunus?
Yunus Kabul, yeah.
Yeah. That guy.
The only time we've won in the Premier League at the Emirates.
Yeah.
That's
crazy, isn't it? How many years ago was that? What year was that?
2010, I think.
10? Yeah. I think it's going to be a great game. I really do. I don't think it's going to be as easy as we think. And it's wrong to go into this with too much confidence. And both managers are under pressure. Mikel is under the most pressure, of course, because of the fact that we've challenged for the last 2 years. But I think this is a moment for Ange. If Ange can beat Arsenal, he galvanizes an entire fan base and sets up maybe more expectation. But if you win this game, I think it's massive for him to get a result against us. And for Mikel Arteta, he just cannot lose this game.
No disrespect, Sophie, to the teams that Spurs have played so far, but I feel like this is the real test because even Newcastle, great team, great stadium, great fans, but they were there for the taking a couple of weeks ago. And the Everton side that we played had so many injury problems, only had 14 professional players registered for that game. And then, of course, our opening weekend, that Monday Night Football away at Leicester, you know, we had so many chances, should have won the game comfortably. So I think Ange Postecoglou is absolutely right that we have played well in all 3 games, but I feel really that the Spurs fans could be that 12th man on Sunday, because the way that the Spurs fans were a couple of years ago under Conte when we beat you 3-0, that was electric. That was absolutely incredible. And that is exactly what we need the place to be like again. Talking about the stadiums, the change from Highbury to the Emirates, do you think it's been similar to Spurs White Hart Lane to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? Because the atmosphere, a lot of fans say it, the atmosphere just hasn't been the same.
I think your atmosphere got off to a faster start than ours.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And I don't think it's been as good as it has in the last 3 seasons. You know, I've been to the Emirates where it has been so quiet. There's not much to cheer for. It hasn't been much to cheer for in the Premier League. Fourth, going into the Champions League, getting knocked out by Bayern Munich, getting knocked out by Barcelona, fourth. Yeah, okay, yielded financial rewards. We moved into the stadium. We had to be fiscally responsible and all of those things. But you went from a rocking Highbury, and you'd been there many times, Chris, close to the edge of the pitch, the intimacy. It was just a winning culture there. And I think that Emirates will become that for people if we win the Premier League. I think that it's definitely evolved, and you know, the Ashburton Army helped with that 3 seasons ago, and winning cures everything, as a wise man once said to me. And that's the difference. You know, you win games. I've noticed this season it's been a bit quiet, and it's a bit up and down. And towards the end of last season, the nerves started kicking in. But yeah, it's been brilliant. And the away fans, though, I don't think our away fans are amazing. They really are. They're incredible. But we've got to keep it up at the Emirates this season, because they're going to need us.
Sophie, what do you make of, I suppose, a lot of the modern fans saying about top 4? Everything's always about top 4. But I feel like the older fans, it's more about the trophies. Would you take top 4 over a trophy, or is it trophies all day long for you?
For me, it's trophies all day long. It's evident in someone at Manchester United agrees with that, because if Ten Hag hadn't won the FA Cup, he'd be out of a job, right? And I love sports is about winning.
Yeah.
If you want a participation trophy, you know, you do that on Sunday League, you know, with the kids and stuff like that. I was lambasted a while ago saying I'd rather win the FA Cup than end up in 4th and nothing. And then like, yeah, but then we don't have the Champions League. Okay, here we are again with the discussion with the Champions League, and now you've got the new format, and it, you know, some people love it, some people hate it. What it yields financially, that is the model of modern day football. I don't love it, but I know it's it's necessary in order to keep up with the Joneses. But yeah, I would actually love to win the League Cup this year, Chris, because I think this team needs to win something together, and early in the season, get a taste of it and galvanize, and it helps galvanize them. You got March, April, and May then to have that winning feeling and understand and know what it is to lift a trophy together, win a final. Yeah. I think we need something like that. And we actually haven't won the League Cup since '93. It's been a long time.
Wow. Yeah. Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the year where we met them a lot in the old FA Cup and the League Cup.
Yeah, FA Cup final and League Cup final. It's funny, I was saying that the other day, because we played you, I think, on the Thursday night at Highbury, and that was the only time we've beat you at Highbury in the Premier League, when you put a pretty much reserve team out and John Hendry scored a couple of goals in a 3-1 win. Yeah. What do you make of the new format in the Champions League and the Europa League? Do you think it gives Spurs a better chance of perhaps progressing in the Europa League, because of course Spurs are back in Europe, and you know, the way that these games are done now, 4 at home, 4 different teams, 4 away, 4 different teams. Are you a fan of this new format?
At first I wasn't, and then when I saw the fixture list for like September 18th, I'm like, wow, Liverpool, Real Madrid, that's tasty, right? But I think they're taking us for a little bit of a ride, Chris, because I fear this is the test market, the beta test for the Super League.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Call me old school. I like change sometimes. Sometimes I don't. I thought it was fine the way it was. It's just about them making more money. That's more. We're putting so. Listen, I know these players earn a lot of money, but they're not robots. You know, we're seeing players break down left, right, and center. You've got international break coming up again in October. They're adding more games. They're talking about wanting to add another game for an overseas match. I mean, when is this madness all going to end? So I'm sure it's going to be a spectacle because of the games you get early and big games. But for me, I say I hold my breath because I feel like there's something else coming up behind the scenes. And they're going to increase the Club World Cup as well. It's craziness to me. I just don't get it.
Sophie, of course, on Sunday, Arsenal wear their away kit. What do you make of this? Because it's not the club's decision. Apparently, there's too much white, which, of course, will match Spurs. What do you make of this?
Okay, so when I read that and when I heard that, I was like, too much white? Are you joking? Come on, really? I don't like it at all. I don't like that away kit, firstly. It's crazy to me, but it's designed for the kids these days, isn't it? Streetwear and stuff. Look cool. I know they're paying homage to Africa and I love that, but sorry, at the end of the day, I like my old kits. I like my away kits to be traditional. And I love it when we wear red and white and we play you in the old blue and white. So I'm not happy about it. I hope it doesn't jinx us. That's exactly where I had to say it out loud. That's exactly what it's about. Forget the kit and the design. It's really about, I hope this doesn't jinx us.
Sophie, the match officials on Sunday, Jared Gillett will referee the game and VAR Stuart Atwell. What have you made of the officiating? I know you mentioned about Declan Rice. Of course, after the game, Declan Rice said, I was completely in the wrong. Who do you actually blame? Because do the majority of the Arsenal fans blame Declan Rice for doing what he did? Or is it all about the referees because they're so inconsistent?
I would say I can't remember what Brighton player it was that kicked it 30 yards in the first half and didn't get a card, right? So I'm with Arsenal fans about the inconsistency, whether it's my team or not. I saw a lot of teams get shafted last season that were not called Arsenal Football Club. We're all in this together when it comes to the inconsistency of referees and VAR, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you cannot put your team or yourself in that position and give an inconsistent referee the opportunity to make that decision. I think a lot of the Arsenal fans are, against the ref, and rightly so. I see it because of the inconsistency factor. But I'm in that minority too that's like, how did Declan allow that to even become a choice for the referee? And he needs to be smarter than that.
Sophie, last question before I ask you for your score prediction. I'd like you to predict this early on the top 4 and the 3 teams you think will be relegated.
Oof. Damn. Because I'm on a Tottenham podcast, I'm going to pick us to win the title, right? Just because if I don't, I'll get pelters, and I can't deal with it, Chris.
I've got that question in early. You said no. You said no already.
I think Man City will win the title. I think we come second, Liverpool third, and I really, truly believe fourth is up for grabs. I think you got a great shot at finishing fourth. I do. Chelsea, we don't know enough yet. They've got all of this prowess going forward, but how many goals are they going to concede? I know you have a similar situation. Manchester United, can you trust them?
No.
And Newcastle, I'm not sure about this season. They don't have the European football, which might come in handy for them. So they're the ones to watch out for. Relegation, I think if Everton don't change their manager, they will go down. They're in trouble. They're in big trouble. They're awful. They have been awful. And it pains me to say that because I have a soft spot for Everton.
They're going to Villa this weekend as well. What a difficult game that's going to be for them.
That's a tough match. Southampton, if Southampton pull their record against Manchester United is awful, but Southampton I fear for as well. And I think Wolves might be in trouble. Something about Wolves that's way off this season. I thought they played rugby when we played them. Not as good as I used to like. They used to be one of those teams, mid-tier teams that you kind of feared playing because they had so much creativity and pace and stuff. But there's something about Wolves that I think they might be in trouble. Those would be my three based on what I know now. I feel like Ipswich might just survive. You know, I think they might do it. Yeah.
It's interesting with Wolves because they were one of the teams that impressed me most last season. Of course, they've done the double over Spurs, but those two games very, very good against us.
Yeah.
Sophie, score prediction. I'm going to go first. I'm going to go for a 3-2 Spurs win. But I'll be honest, I wouldn't be at all surprised if the game was a draw.
3 goals against David Raya and Saliba and Gabriel and Ben White and Timber, huh? Very bold, very bold. I like it.
3-2, yeah. You never know in a North London derby, though, do you? The form goes out the window.
Yeah, it does.
The passion in the game is incredible, so you never know.
Yeah. I think 3-1 to us. I think you'll score first, and we'll wake up, and then we'll win 3-1.
3-1. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Sophie, you're always such a great guest. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you on social media? And if any of my viewers or listeners want to head over to your channel, how can they find you?
It's Highbury Squad and at Highbury Squad on the old social sphere. And Chris, it's always great chatting to you. Always enjoy our chats. Super Kev always thought that you were one of the real ones. He didn't go on any Tottenham podcasts, but he always enjoyed having a chat with you. And you've got a really good audience as well. And well done on all your pre-season stuff. I was telling you in the green room too. Your content is great, and the way you follow the team throughout the year is impressive. I know I'm an Arsenal fan, but I enjoy following you, and hopefully we'll get to butt heads on Sky or TalkSport together soon.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned Kevin Campbell. Of course, extremely sad news that Kevin Campbell passed away. Of course, he was on this channel not so long ago, Sophie. So thank you so much for sorting that out and having him on here. But of course, will be missed by many all around the world. Such sad news. Sophie, thank you so much for your time. As I said, thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. And let's hope that we're smiling Sunday afternoon. Come on, you Spurs.